This episode begins with a flashback, typical Star Trek Picard, am I right? This takes place during the Romulan relocation back when Picard was going through his cosplaying as Belloc phase. He's visiting planet Vashti, home of
Romulan warrior nuns.
That's a real thing?
The planet is named after Queen Vashti from the Book of Esther, who was so vain she refused to show her beauty at royal court. But a more modern, woke interpretation of the story is that Vashti was strong-minded, an independent woman who didn't need a man telling her what to do. So the name alone tells us a lot about the women who live here. The title, Absolute Candor, is their way of life, hence their greeting with the open hands. Picard and the Romulans greet one another by saying,
"Go on, true."
This means peace be with you, and was originally heard in the TNG episode Unification.
Joel, I'm true.
These people are playing with triangular Romulan playing cards similar to the tarot cards we saw in the last episode. Picard mentions
10,000 new refugees.
referencing his mission in the Picard Countdown comic book. And this line
He dislikes displays of emotion. He's not overly fond of children.
is mostly true. When Next Generation first started, he didn't like kids.
I don't feel comfortable with children.
In fact, he had a strict rule.
Children are not allowed on the bridge.
But over time, he grew to like Wesley Crusher.
Shut up, Wesley.
And he wasn't a huge fan of the ship's children celebrating him on Captain Picard Day.
Why does it have to be me?
But secretly, he's an old softy because he actually kept that banner years later. He brings Eleanor a copy of the Three Musketeers, and a musketeer version of Picard appeared as a hologram in the episode Hollow Pursuits.
In God's name, where did you learn to fight like this?
And the duel in this episode is also very Three Musketeers-y. Picard shows Eleanor how to fence, and we've seen Picard fence many times before. It's even how Guinan taught Picard not to show mercy to the Borg.
You felt sorry for me. Look what it got you.
Picard is shown around his new old office by a hospitality hologram.
Hospitality emergencies are rare on this vessel.
This ship is crewed entirely by emergency holograms, similar to the Doctor, who is a permanent crew member on Star Trek Voyager. In the last episode, we met the medical and navigational holograms, and in this one, we meet the pilot and hospitality, and we learned why Rios programmed them all to look like him.
In general, the captain keeps his own company.
He also listens to Klingon opera, a genre that's been mentioned several times in Deep Space Nine and TNG. And check out just how much Worf loves this music. When Picard's doorbell rings, he says,
Come!
which he used to say all the time on TNG.
Come, 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 come.
We find out more about Agnes Jurati,
I used to live with a guy who liked paper books. Here's my dad.
but something's up with her. She shows up just in time to kill a Romulan secret police. She's Picard's only source of information about the synthetics. She's either Commodore O in disguise, or she's working with Commodore O, or maybe she's an android herself. Tell me your Agnes Jurati theories in the comments below. Now let's move on to Soji on the former Borg cube. She's researching Ramda, the mythologist who called her the Destroyer in last week's episode.
You are the destroyer!
We learn about a thing called,
Come, madame.
basically, Romulan Ragnarok. In last week's breakdown, I had a theory that maybe ancient Romulans did encounter artificial life, and this was the source of their prophecy and the Zhat Vash. This line of their ancient prophecy is interesting.
Jahas belavor. Zechar kwech mogavlaza. Echdroi. Soran. Ebjeleb.
So, in keeping with this, let's say that Soji's the Destroyer. Then the demons in chains could be synthetics like we saw in the Mars attack. So if ancient Romulans encountered synthetic life, it stands to reason that synthetic life might still be out there in the universe somewhere. The show's hinting pretty strongly that there's lots of other synthetics in the galaxy who remain hidden. So what if Dodge and Soji actually come from this hidden community and their mother is just a hologram? And then maybe these synthetics sent them to the Borg Cube and the Daystrom Institute, two places that are working with artificial intelligence. The Zhat Vash are trying to find this homeworld of synthetics.
Have you found the nest? Has the machine given up the location of its fellow abominations?
And for all we know, these synthetics might have existed for thousands of years. So maybe, I'm just throwing this out there, maybe Bruce Maddox was a sophisticated synthetic all along. In the classic episode Measure of a Man, Maddox appeals to Starfleet for permission to disassemble and study data.
And now you propose to dismantle him. So that I can learn from it and construct more.
But what if he actually wanted to take data apart so the older synthetics could study how this new one works? Now that might be far-fetched, but there's definitely some kind of conspiracy here. Later, they strongly hint that Soji's memories of her arrival might have been implanted as well.
When you shipped out for the Beta Quadrant aboard the Ellison,
There's no record that you were a passenger on the Ellison that day.
And by the way, that ship name, the Ellison, is probably a tribute to sci-fi writer Harlan Ellison, who wrote the classic time travel episode, The City on the Edge of Forever. Back at Vashti, Picard, for some reason, decides to kill 7 Minutes by starting the civil rights movement. Then he's surprised when people get upset.
I promise you.
Promise.
In little detail, I like that his jacket seems modeled after the design of his old Starfleet uniform, but it's mostly black, signifying that he has no rank or identity now. Elnor comes to his rescue, and this Romulan says,
Galang is no match for a disruptor, sister boy.
And he's got a good point. This elf samurai trained by warrior nuns is cool, but like Han says,
hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Elnor also mentions my favorite member of the Enterprise crew, Data's cat Spot. The episode ends with the ship dogfighting with a classic Romulan bird of prey like we first saw in their original episode, Balance of Terror, which has another connection to Picard that might support my AI theory. This crew member in the background, it turns out that's your mom. The episode ends with 7 of 9 joining the crew. Now, like Picard, she was a member of the Borg Collective. She was rehabilitated by the crew of Voyager and became a regular cast member on that show. It's interesting that she's also left Starfleet, and that she still goes by the name 7 of 9. After a few decades, I kind of thought she might go back to her human name, Annika. The episode was directed by number 1 himself, Jonathan Frakes. He's directed several Trek episodes and 2 of the TNG movies, First Contact and Insurrection.
Saddle up. Lock and load.
Ugh, awful movie. Well guys, that's all the Easter eggs that I found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.